go. That's Grand Cross. Hi, my name is Jayme CheeseSlice. I'm the engineer producer of Uncontrolled Opposition. That's the show you're watching right now. We're going to have a good one for you today. I think we're eager and ready to go. But if this is the first time you've ever watched Uncontrolled Opposition, we are a radio program that airs on WBAI and the Progressive Radio Network. That's what we do first and foremost. So what we're doing here on YouTube is just recording that radio program live for you to watch fully unedited and uncut. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring on Gloria and Jayme, the hosts of Uncontrolled Opposition. Hello, you guys. How are you guys doing?
Hey, Jayme. Hey, Jayme.
All right. You ready to go? And we have our guest today, the professor. Welcome to the show. Are you ready to go?
Professor, can you go a little bit more in the camera? There you go. Because we're also broadcasting on X.
There we go. All right.
So a little bit more to the left before we start. Professor? No. Look in. Can you see the side screen? Yeah.
I can move the camera.
There we go.
Is that better?
Yeah. Your beautiful face is showing. Thank you.
Good.
All right, Gloria, I'm going to hand off the show to you, and let's get started.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to Uncontrolled Opposition, where together we battle mind wars with truth strikes. I'm Gloria Guillo, an investigative journalist, and I'm here with my co-host, Professor Jayme Kuzmarov, managing editor of Covert Action magazine. Our producer and engineer is Jayme CheeseSlice. The opinions you hear are ours and that of our guest, not those of WBAI, the Pacifica Foundation, or the Progressive Radio Network. This content is intended for informational and educational purposes only and should not be interpreted as professional or legal advice. Listeners are encouraged to form their own opinions. Today, we welcome a most distinguished guest, an expert on the promotion of a democratic and equitable international order, professor, attorney, author, Alfred de Zayas. Tragically, we live in a world where the noble promise of human rights, freedom from fear and want, the right to peace, food, health, shelter, belief, and expression, is routinely hijacked and turned into a weapon against the working class and impoverished at home and abroad. This isn't by accident. It's deliberate. This is the core truth Alfred de Zayas exposes in his 2023 book, The Human Rights Industry, where he draws on more than 4 decades as a senior UN lawyer, rapporteur, and independent expert. He condemns the industry, which includes a network of diplomats, politicians, NGOs, academics, journalists, and think tanks that weaponize these values for geopolitics. The UN Human Rights Council, the International Criminal Court, Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, these once honorable mechanisms now serve double standards that protect the powerful and punish those that courageously stand in the way to their economic exploitation. We will look at the evidence he lays bare. In 2022, the UN General Assembly voted to suspend Russia from the Human Rights Council amid the Ukraine conflict, 93 in favor, 24 against, a highly politicized move enabled by open voting instead of the secret ballot Russia requested, fueling Russophobia and perceptions of engineered bias in the UN itself. Yet where is the suspension for NATO countries that launched wars of aggression in Yugoslavia, Iraq, Libya, Syria? Where is the accountability for Saudi Arabia's genocide in Yemen, or the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, for India's systematic crimes in Kashmir, Colombia's decades of killings of activists and indigenous people? The Council stays silent when the abusers are Western allies. The ICC, Professor de Zayas calls it a neo-colonial tool, prosecuting mostly African leaders and foes of the U.S. and West, while U.S. officials escape warrants for their crimes. NGOs fare no better. Amnesty International was infiltrated by British intelligence from its founding days. Its founder admitted it in 1966. CIA and Mossad ties followed. Amnesty's USA former executive director, I'll repeat this, Amnesty's USA's former executive director came straight from the State Department, aligning campaigns with US priorities, undermining Syria and Belarus. Human Rights Watch, funded by George Soros and sharing offices with NED-backed groups like Chinese human rights defenders. It peddles fabricated atrocities, stories against US targets, Iraq, North Korea, while ignoring victims of Western-backed violence in eastern Ukraine. Its 2008 report on Venezuela under Chavez was slammed by Latin American scholars as a politically motivated essay lacking scholarship, impartiality, and credibility, relying on uncorroborated claims and right-wing media to attack a government resisting U.S. sabotage. Professor de Zayas doesn't mince words. Too many NGOs go abroad to create confusion, interfere in international affairs, and pave the way for color revolutions and undemocratic regime change. They manipulate genuine concern for human welfare to justify lethal interventions like Libya in 2011, where responsibility to protect became a pretext for devastation. Terms like human rights, democracy, rule of law, and freedom are now propagandist buzzwords that demean real discourse. This industry has co-opted the anti-war spirit of the 60s, turning liberals into cheerleaders for endless wars framed as humanitarian. Professor de Zayas' hope that we silence the propaganda, challenge corporate intelligence foundations, and force leaders back to the UN Charter's principles of peace and sovereignty. The truth is liberating, but it demands courage. Read the human rights industry, see through the mask, and demand a system that actually protects every human being, not just those that serve empire. Thank you. Professor de Zayas, please explain your critical work to our audience. Thank you so much for coming here today.
Well, Gloria, notwithstanding all the bad news that surrounds us, I don't give up my optimism. I think it's in our hands to fix the problems. And my human rights trilogy, there are 3 books, not only the human rights industry, but building a just world order with 25 principles of international order, countering mainstream narratives that makes the point that that's the war we have to win first, the information war. And of course, the human rights industry that shows how the system has been penetrated, not only by Mossad and the CIA and M16, etc., but it's been penetrated through a system of recruitment that excludes independent professionals. I mean, a person like me today would not be hired into the United Nations. A person like me would be filtered out at the first interview. And the same thing goes for rapporteurs. It is extremely rare that a professor or an independent expert becomes a rapporteur for the United Nations if he has a prior track record of independent thinking and publishing. I must say, we're not alone, huh? We have very good people in the system. Among them, for more than 20 years, Professor Jeffrey Sachs was the top man on sustainable development, on the Millennium Development Goals. He was the personal advisor of Kofi Annan, of Ban Ki-moon, of Antonio Guterres, Richard Falk, Professor Richard Falk from UCLA and from Princeton University, emeritus, of course. He's been rapporteur. The great Professor Francesca Albanese, someone I have had the honor to share panels with. These are top people, top professionals They're saying the right things, but they're not being listened to. It's like the Joker of a king. They let him speak, but they do not follow any of their concrete, pragmatic, implementable recommendations. Outside the United Nations system, there are also great voices. I mean, Noam Chomsky, one of my heroes since my Harvard Law School days. And they've written fabulous books and very accurate analysis of the problem. They've given us not only diagnosis, they've given us the way forward, how to fix all of these problems. But of course, the military, industrial, financial, digital, media complex has no interest in changing because they're making too much money the way it is right now. And I must say, before I go on into a detailed analysis of the problems of the Human Rights Council, of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, of the various expert committees of the European Court of Human Rights, don't think that the European Court of Human Rights is a professional body that speaks law and human rights. It too has been penetrated. The Inter-American Court of Human Rights has been penetrated. I myself, when I was a senior lawyer at the Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights, not once, but twice, the CIA approached me to become a mole. Now, I must say, if they did it with me, they did it with plenty others. And I think I have a suspicion who became. I told them, go and jump in Lake Geneva because I'm not going to do your job. But as I say, there's a problem when 80% of the staff of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, and when I'm saying our human rights institutions, I'm also saying the UNCTAD, the International Labor Office, et cetera, 80% are ideologues. 80% are recruited because they are going to toe the line. And also among the rapporteurs, the vast majority of the rapporteurs are in the service of Washington and Brussels. They're not in the service of humanity. They're not there for you or for me. They're there to advance a worldview which is essentially incompatible with the Charter of the United Nations. And let's say it. The Charter of the United Nations is the closest thing we have to a world constitution. When people talk about a rules-based international order, I say, we have it, damn it. It is the United Nations Charter, which is a very thorough document and a very good document. The only thing we need is to enforce it. But it cannot be enforced for as long as 5 members of the Security Council block everything. Although I see a purpose for the veto power. Veto power, by the way, is Article 27 of the UN Charter. This privilege that 5 states have can be used for good or it can be used for evil. When Russia and China vetoed resolutions for bombing interventions in Syria, etc., I think that that was a positive use of the veto power. You don't want to use force when there are other ways of doing things. Article 2, paragraph 3 of the UN Charter obliges all states members to resolve their differences by diplomacy, by peaceful means. You have an obligation to prevent warfare, not only to correct the conflicts. You have to address legitimate grievances, etc., etc. But when the United States uses the veto, and it's done it about 80 times to shield Israel from criticism, to shield Israel from sanctions, that is a misuse, that is an abuse of the veto power, because it actually goes against the purposes and principles of the United Nations. That is, the veto power should only be used, not arbitrarily, not as an expression of hegemony. It should be used to advance the purposes and principles of the United Nations, which are, of course, peace, number one, human rights, number two, and development, number three. Now, I wrote in my report 2012 to the General Assembly detailed plan of action, how to phase out the veto power and how to make sure that it does not get abused, how to limit the scope of this veto power. And either, I mean, it's no way you can get rid of it immediately, because it would be, of course, vetoed. I mean, any amendment of the Council under Article 108 needs the approval of the Security Council. So forget trying to get rid of the veto once and for all. You'll have to do it step by step. And that's all explained in my report of 2012. And I picked that up in my book, Building a Just World Order. But going back, because I started teasing you with the idea of how to fix the problems today. Well, I think that with a megalomaniac in power in Washington, with hand-picked megalomaniacs around him, with Hegseth and Rubio and the others, I don't see any hope that this administration will ever go back to respect of the United Nations and of the United Nations Charter. They want to destroy it. That's what they want to do. They want to have absolute power. This is what I call retrogression. Not only retrogression in international law, retrogression in human rights, this is a civilizational collapse. They want to go back to Roman times. They want to go back to a Pax Romana, now a Pax Americana, that would be just subjugation of the entire planet under the will of a megalomaniac called Donald Trump. Now, that is anachronistic. Call it a dinosaur. Call it anything you want. But it is a problem we are facing. It is a civilizational challenge that we must see it as it is and not try to soften it and not try to say, oh, well, you know, he doesn't really mean it, etc. He does mean it. I mean, he thinks he is an imperator mundi. He sees himself as legibus solutus, as above international law, unbound by any rules. And that is going back to Thomas Hobbes and to his Leviathan and to absolutism. He wants to reinstate absolutism, imperialism, and neocolonialism. That is what we're seeing. So the best hope for peace, the best hope for the survival of civilization, society, is actually our agreement to live together under certain rules. And as I said, we have the rules in the UN Charter, and I consider the International Court of Justice to be our international constitutional court. And the drafters of the statute of the International Court of Justice did not give the International Court of Justice immediate direct application in the domestic legal orders of the member states, meaning there's no effective way to enforce judgments or advisory opinions of the International Court of Justice. It depends on the political will of states. And obviously, the United States under Trump, but also it wasn't much different under Joe Biden or under Obama. Whether Republican or Democratic, they're both megalomaniac. They are both hegemonial. And after all, who brought us into this situation, if not a Democrat called Bill Clinton? I mean, if Bill Clinton in the 1990s had respected the commitments made by George H.W. Bush, Bush father, and the commitments by our Secretary of State, James Baker, we wouldn't have had the war in Ukraine. There was no need whatever for NATO to expand eastwards. NATO was a legitimate defense alliance for 45 years when the Soviet Union was a virulently expansive country that wanted to make the entire world Sovietized. Now, obviously, we want to defend our identity and our rights and our choices and our self-determination. So it was legitimate to have a counterpart to the Warsaw Pact. But when the Warsaw Pact was dissolved in 1991, that made the North Atlantic Treaty Organization redundant. There was no more purpose for this NATO, which then morphed into a war coalition and then proceeded to commit crimes in the Yugoslav wars, and not only in Serbia, also in Bosnia and Herzegovina, etc., in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Libya, in Syria. There have been serial violations of the United Nations Charter by NATO, which would qualify NATO as a, quote, criminal organization, unquote, for purposes of Articles 9 and 10 of the Statute of the International Military Tribunal for Nuremberg, which was adopted, as you know, in 1945, to be exact, on the 8th of August 1945, and which led to the conviction of 3 German organizations, including the Gestapo, as criminal organizations. Apply exactly the same criteria that the Nuremberg trial applied on the Nazis, and you would find that NATO is a criminal organization and should be disbanded. But of course, this is heresy, what I'm saying. Nobody wants to listen to that because of the massive public relations that has sold NATO as a necessary organization, as a beneficial organization, as a defensive alliance. We keep talking about defense. When in its history has NATO ever exercised defense? That's a good question. I mean, at least Donald Trump, in one instance, has told the truth, has been, shall we say, honest with everybody. He renamed the Department of Defense Department of War, because that's what it's about. I mean, at what time was the Department of Defense defending us, American citizens, from dangers abroad? Quite the contrary. The Department of Defense, with all of its color revolutions and all of its aggressions and regime change schemes, has actually increased terrorism and increased the dangers that we Americans suffer, not only in the United States itself, but abroad. I mean, I have apprehension. If I were to travel as an American in the Middle East, I would see myself as a target of terrorism. And why would I be a target of terrorism when I don't have anything against the Muslims, etc.? Well, because I will be identified with my country, and I will be held guilty by association for all the crimes committed not only by the United States but by Israel. And going back to this situation, my recipe for changing the paradigm: BDS, boycott, divest, sanction. It is imperative to make it clear to the United States and to the state of Israel that the global majority, the rest of the world, the Latin Americans, the Africans, the Asians, are not going to put up with this hegemonial attitude that the United States and Israel put on show, on display. And it is possible for these countries, in particular for the BRICS countries, for the Shanghai Cooperation Association, for the non-aligned movement, to say, look, we don't really need F-16s or F-35s. We don't really need Boeing aircraft. We don't really need all of these extremely expensive Lockheed Martin and Raytheon products and services. If countries said, okay, we'll do without it, we can buy automobiles elsewhere. I mean, it's a lot of countries, Japan and South Korea and China, producing very good automobiles. We don't have to buy Cadillacs. We don't have to buy Ford. We don't have to buy Caterpillars or whatever. We can buy from other countries. And that, if nothing else, would hit the United States so hard. It would hit the American economy so hard that probably Mr. Trump would have a disaster in November at the midterm elections, and he could be impeached. He might be forced to resign. And I would welcome this kind of pressure, because without pressure, nothing is going to convince Donald Trump that he has to change his ways. Now, the Europeans have shown a little bit of backbone, pushing back in the context of Greenland. Now, they do have powerful instruments. The so-called anti-coercion instrument is a mechanism whereby they can restrict U.S. access to European financial institutions, banks, and they can impose countermeasures against the United States, taxes, tariffs, etc. They can make the U.S. life in Europe difficult. But they still, mentally, the Europeans are handicapped. I mean, there are few of them who are capable of jumping over their own shadow. They are so scared, and they are likely to adapt to this grab for power that Trump is displaying. And instead of saying, look, guy, enough is enough. We've had it with you. And we're not going to buy any more U.S. Treasury bonds. As a matter of fact, we're going to sell all the U.S. Treasury bonds we have. And considering that the United States runs a debt of $38.6 $1.5 trillion, the United States is essentially bankrupt. And with what money is the United States going to buy Greenland if he wants to? If Greenland were for sale? Well, the only way the United States can buy it is either by printing money, printing dollars, thereby reducing the value of the dollar, or by borrowing further. So soon we will have $40 trillion in national debt. And that's a hell of a lot of debt for each and every American citizen. And that links up also with another countermeasure that can be taken against the United States and Israel. Don't sell any rare earths to the United States. Don't sell any lithium or all of these important metals that are necessary for the electronics industry, for the artificial intelligence interest, for the military industry, et cetera, et cetera. So having said that, I've given you my opinion about how the rest of the world should react to Trump's lawlessness. Going back to the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights and to my book, The Human Rights Industry. Now, during my 25 years in the office as a senior lawyer, during my years as consultant, during my years as independent expert, and I continue, by the way. Last week I was at a consultation at the United Nations. Next week I have side events at the United Nations. I am constantly involved in certain activities in the United Nations. Well, I have certainly felt it, observed it, confirmed it, that the office is not the office that I entered in 1980. At the time I was hired, we were a small group of professionals who were committed. We wanted to make a difference. We wanted to change the world for the better. Like in Porto Alegre, we felt that the world can be different. The world can be reformed. And we were committed to that. But over the last 20 years, especially, the House has become more and more politicized. And as I said, very much in the service of the collective West. We have forgotten the suffering of the Latin Americans and the Africans and the Asians. And we're using the United Nations in a manner that will strengthen the neo-colonial policies of Washington and Brussels. And that is a disgrace for everybody involved. I have said so, and I have said so also to High Commissioners for Human Rights. By the way, talking about the High Commissioners for Human Rights, I have enormous respect for Navi Pillay. I think Navi Pillay was by far and away the best High Commissioner we ever had. Another very good High Commissioner, but rather timid, rather too cautious, was Michelle Bachelet, the former president of Chile. I appreciated her, and I had something to do in preparing her mission to Venezuela. Was the first mission to Venezuela by a High Commissioner for Human Rights. I had quite a bit to do in paving the way for establishing a presence of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights in Caracas. And the idea is not just naming and shaming. I mean, this is a childish way of approaching human rights and approaching international law. If there are problems, what did I do when I was in Caracas? I told the Foreign Minister Jorge Arriaza, look, Jorge, you know you have problems. Let us help you. Let's see how the United Nations agencies, whether it be ILO or WHO or the Food and Agriculture Organization, how can we help you? And I was, shall we say, the facilitator to have new MOUs between these United Nations agencies and Venezuela to help the Venezuelan people. It's not our function to help a president or a vice president or whatever. Our function is to try to help the people of Venezuela. And the same thing goes with China. When Michelle Bachelet went to China back in 2022, I thought she had an enormously successful mission. I applauded that mission. She gave a brilliant end of mission report in Guangzhou. That was on the 28th of May, 2022. You can hear it in YouTube. It's a statement of maybe 15 minutes. It's a very thorough end of mission report and very successful because she established what we're supposed to do: trust, confidence, established a mechanism, a working group to be able to influence developments in China. It's not just monitoring and saying bad, bad, bad. It is listening to the Chinese people, to the Chinese NGOs, and to the government. I mean, most of the NGOs here in Geneva are into naming and shaming. They think that human rights is that. It's just insult the other guy. But if you insult the other guy, what do you think the other guy's going to do? He's going to feel aggressed and it's going to block. He's not going to cooperate. I mean, the more you insult the government, the more you impose sanctions on a government, the least likely it is that there will be any development. But what you are actually doing is destabilizing the country so that the government is going to restrict the right of freedom of expression. It's going to restrict the right of peaceful assembly. It's going to restrict the right of peaceful association. It's going to restrict civil and political rights. So don't just go around thinking, I have a big stick and I'm going to hit you over the head and you're going to do what I tell you. It doesn't work. I mean, without a stick in my hand, during my mission to Venezuela in November, December 2017, I saw the opposition. I saw the universities, the professors. I saw the a tremendous number of civil society organizations, at least 45 NGOs that I interacted with. I actually took off my bow tie, took off my jacket, put on a guayabera, and went walking the streets. As you probably know, Spanish is my mother tongue. So I mixed with the population to get the temperature, to get a feeling of what they were thinking. And I assure you, 90% of the population hates the United States. 90% of the population hates the puppets that the United States imposes on them. 90% blames the United States for their misery because their misery is a direct result, not of the mismanagement by Hugo Chavez or by Maduro. It's a direct result of illegal, unilateral, coercive measures, which we call sanctions. And I always object to calling them sanctions because that is Orwellian language. The term sanction implies that you have the legal or the moral authority to punish somebody else, to impose sanctions, but you don't. I mean, what you're doing is using force, putting a label, sanctions, and reversing the roles. I mean, you are actually the aggressor, but you're blaming the other one of a prior offense that justifies your imposing so-called sanctions, which again I translate into unilateral coercive measures. By the way, among my heroes, and I have many in the human rights field, I already mentioned Richard Falk and Jeff Sachs, but here, Professor Alena Dohan, I was with her in a consultation last week, and she's going to have a consultation, her last consultation actually, on the 9th and 10th of April of this year. I've written several chapters for her books, and she is a rapporteur on unilateral coercive measures. And she has shown concretely the lethal aspect of unilateral coercive measures. Understand that sanctions kill. Economic sanctions kill just as much as a bullet, just as much as a conventional war. Why? Because if you are a diabetic, you don't get your insulin in time, you're dead. If you have HIV/AIDS and you don't get your anti-retroviral drugs, you're dead. If you suffer from kidney malfunction, you need dialysis. There's a little piece in the dialysis machine that broke down. You can't get it. You can't replace it because it's also blocked by the unilateral coercive measures. So you die too. Prevention of cancer, scanners, you can't get scanners. And during the COVID pandemic, Cuba, Nicaragua, Venezuela, they were all targeted, and they couldn't get international assistance to fight COVID. It was murder, nothing less than murder. That's why I say unilateral coercive measures are, in a very real sense, crimes against humanity within the meaning of Article 6, little c, of the Nuremberg Statute, and within the meaning of Article 7 of the Statute of Rome, or the Statute of the International Criminal Court. But you, Gloria, already mentioned, and I was going to say amen when you were speaking, because when you said that the International Criminal Court is neo-colonial, it is very much neo-colonial. It is worse than that. I have no respect for this organization, and the only reason that they caved in the case of Netanyahu and Gallant is that at the same time they also issued warrants for the arrest of 3 Hamas leaders who were also killed by Netanyahu and Gallant. So the only ones who remain alive are Netanyahu and Gallant. It is a disgrace for America. It is a disgrace for the West that Netanyahu is allowed to speak in the United Nations General Assembly. And his speech was such an outrage, such a disgrace. And at least most of the delegations left the room in protest. But still, he should never have been allowed to speak in the General Assembly. And when I say that the General Assembly has been remiss in not adopting a resolution under Article 6 of the UN Charter that would have allowed to expel Israel from the United Nations. Now, that's something that I have been arguing since 2023, since the beginning of the Gaza genocide. I mean, the systematic violations of the United Nations Charter by Israel, the systematic violations of the specific recommendations of the International Court of Justice in its there are three advisory opinions concerning Israel, which have been totally flouted by Israel with the applause of Washington and with the applause of the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, CNN, etc., etc. You have here such a reversal of roles that the aggressor, Israel, is presented as the victim, and the victim is then demonized as terrorist. And
we excuse me, Professor. We call that gaslighting in the United States.
Yes,
This is
it is.
gaslighting on a massive level.
Yeah, on a massive level, but it is so intense because, as I say, public relations to sell Israel as a country under the rule of law, and relentless propaganda, relentless lying, the whole issue of the war crimes committed by Hamas on the 7th of October 2023. Obviously, these were war crimes. But how many of the Israelis who died were civilians? How many of the civilians were killed by Israeli fire? Because we know of the Hannibal doctrine that doesn't allow Israelis to fall into captivity. But we also know that the Apache helicopters just shot everybody to smithereens. Killed Hamas, but also killed a hell of a lot of Israelis. So you have to recompute the figures for the 7th of October. And then Max Blumenthal did a very long and thorough documentary on the lies about decapitating babies and raping all of these women and even cooking babies in the oven. The things that were so outrageous, completely invented, just meant to demonize the Palestinians so that you hate them. Now, I already cited to you once Tacitus from his Agricola, 2,000 years ago, where he talked about war, the Romans against the Gauls, and the way that the Gauls were being massacred, etc. And there's one line that strikes me, and I can give you the exact text in Latin. I can also give you the exact page in the book Agricola, and it is human nature to hate those whom you have hurt and intend to hurt. So you demonize the Palestinians, you make them into terrorists, all of them, women, children, medics, they're all terrorists. And that justifies the fact that you can then genocide them. You can kill them all on the basis of a narrative that is completely false. And here again is the collective guilt, the complicity of American media, European media, in accepting this narrative, although they know it's wrong, although they know that the information has been definitively rebutted, they continue repeating the old lies.
The other thing, Professor, is that they also dehumanize the Palestinians.
Well, that they've done for 80 years. I mean, what people seem to forget in their anachronistic thinking habits is that Israel was born in terrorism. Israel, since day one, since the end of the Second World War, and all of these European Jews moved to Israel. They're not Semites. They're not even Semites. The Semites are the Palestinians. You have the Jews of Russia and Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Ukraine, Galicia, Romania, Bulgaria, who all went as colonizers, as settlers to Palestine, to take over the territory, just the same as Trump wants to take over Greenland, just the same as the Dutch and the Brits took over South Africa. They're just colonizers. This is nothing but settler colonialism. So they went there, they blew up the King David Hotel, killed about 100 Brits. That was 1946. There were several Zionist terrorist groups and recognized as such. The United Nations negotiates, sends an envoy, Count Focke Bernadotte. He gets wiped out also by one of these Zionist terrorist groups. Also, a Zionist terrorist kills the Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. We would have had peace in the 1990s if Rabin had not been killed by a fanatic. So these are things that are obvious. They are in the public record. Everybody knows about it, but you act like it doesn't exist. There it is. You can check it. You can go on YouTube and find it there. You can. It's even in the Wikipedia, and I don't think highly of the Wikipedia. But people don't act on it, and the United Nations doesn't act on it. What bothers me no end is how a system that was established to advance human rights, a system that was created to protect you and to protect me, has been hijacked. Back 2,000 years ago, another great Roman thinker, author, philosopher by the name of Juvenalis, in the sixth satire of his 16 satires, verses 347 and 348. Very simple question. If you want a constitutional question, quis custodiet ipsos custodes? Who is going to guard over the guardians? What are you going to do if the guardians betray you? You're paying the guardians. The guardians are supposed to protect you. They actually stab you in the back. What do you do when the institutions like the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, the International Criminal Court, the International Atomic Energy Agency, the Human Rights Council are sold out, and they're actually supporting those who will torture you? It is an absurd situation, but grow up. I always ask people, where are the grown-ups in the room? Where are the adults in the room? I mean, read the stuff. It's not like I am inventing or I am discovering the wheelbarrow. Other people, far more intelligent than I am, like Jeffrey Sachs and Richard Falk, have said it long before me. And I very much believe in the necessity of the United Nations. I very much believe in the necessity of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. Actually, I was there when we drafted paragraph 18, part 2 of the Vienna Declaration and Program of Action, 1993. I participated in the 3-week conference in Vienna in June 1993. And one of the things that we in the Secretariat pushed was the creation of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. And I think that was an enormous achievement. And to our surprise, it was adopted by the General Assembly in December 1993 in Resolution 39/141. You can go on the internet, 39/141. It's the terms of office, terms of reference of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. And the potential was enormous. But as everything, it gets hijacked. Everything human gets weaponized. It gets politicized. And so it was that we had some high commissioners that were so obviously in the service of the collective West. And
Professor, I'm
Yes.
sorry to interrupt, but we are running out of time.
No,
And I just want to give you an opportunity to please tell our audience how they can purchase your latest book, The Human Rights Industry, and follow your work.
Well, you can get all of my books through Amazon. I'd rather actually you go to the library or you go to your bookstore and order it through the bookstore, because I believe in the necessity of keeping the local bookstore alive. I don't know whether you remember the lovely romantic comedy You Have Mail with I think it was Meg Ryan and Tom Hanks. And here you have someone who's putting the local bookstore out of business. And I very much like the idea of people buying books in bookstores and not through Amazon. But Building a Just World Order came out in 2021 in Clarity Press, Atlanta, Georgia. Then came the Human Rights Industry. Well,
it
ended.
well, the opinions you hear are ours and that of our guest, not those of WBAI, the Pacifica Foundation, or the Progressive Radio Network. That wraps up our show for today. This is Uncontrolled Opposition. I'm Gloria Guillo, joined here by Professor Jayme Kuzmarov. Remember to like and share our broadcast. Your kind support keeps us going. Please find us on Substack, Twitter X, and Podbeam. Thanks for tuning in. Hope to see you next week.
Sorry about that. You should have given me a sign that I had 5 minutes.
Usually Jayme flashes something on the screen, but he's actually doing other shows at the same time. He's got a little conflict scheduling this week.
And you can cut it or whatever. And you can always send to your audience the links to my books. But as I was saying, you cannot get them all through Amazon. And I have 12 books. And I don't know whether you still see me. Do you still see me?
Yeah, we're still live. We're just not recording for the radio at this point.
For instance, this was my first book, Nemesis at Potsdam. I broke a big taboo at the time. I wrote about, shall we say, the greatest ethnic cleansing that Europe has seen ever. That is at the end of the Second World War, when Churchill and Stalin agreed that they were going to put Poland on little wheels and move it 150 kilometers west, except that moving it 150 kilometers west meant that there were 10 million Germans living there, and they had to be moved out. And they called that population transfer, except that it was brutal. A total of 15 million ethnic Germans were expelled from their 700-year-old settlements in East Prussia, Pomerania, Silesia, East Brandenburg, Bohemia, Moravia, Hungary, Yugoslavia, Bulgaria, etc., and thrown into what was left of the Reich, which had been thoroughly bombed by the US and Britain, so that there was no shelter, no food, no harvest, etc. Total loss, a conservative low figure, is 2 million died. And there's some much higher estimates of 3 and 4 million. But in any event, I always use in my books the lowest figure. But I mean, 2 million is already pretty big. It's pretty tough. And being expelled only and exclusively because you are an ethnic German. And even if you were a Jew, a German Jew who was on the population census listed as German, and there were many, they were not listed as Jews, they were listed as German, were expelled too. And they were just as spoliated, etc. So that was my first book. And to my great surprise, it sold a great deal. I must have sold about 30,000. And that was back in 1977. 2 years ago, I'm surfing the internet and suddenly I see Nemesis Potsdam, new edition. I say, hold it there. I've never heard about that. So I clicked on it. So it's in the new program by Routledge in London, which is called Routledge Revivals. So they decided to revive the book.
Nice.
And you can get it in Amazon, the Routledge Revivals. And this is a book that if it had been taken seriously, but as I say, like Noam Chomsky told me, I mean, Noam Chomsky is many times my superior. And a book like his, Manufacturing Consent, was such a tour de force, was so magnificent. And you would think that that would have made people stop and think. Well, no. And my book, which was the first book on the expulsion of the Germans, that laid out all the violations of international law and all of the incompatibilities with the Nuremberg principles, etc., did not stop the ethnic cleansings in Yugoslavia. And it also did not stop the ethnic cleansing and the genocide in Gaza. So these are things to be taken into account. And in another session, maybe we can address some of the other issues that I have, which are, for instance, the hijacking of the Nobel Peace Prize Committee. And I showed this to Jayme, and he used it in the article that he published. The fact that more and more people get the Nobel Peace Prize who are thoroughly unqualified for this award. And as the case may be, it's important that people know this book and buy the book of Frederick Heffermehl, The Real Nobel Peace Prize. And if you think it's worthwhile, we could have another session.
We would love to have you back. You're an honored guest. You're an honored guest.
But now a question to Jayme.
Okay.
Say, Jayme, when is the genocide article coming out?
It's already been published. Yeah, it was published yesterday.
Oh, send me the link. I don't have it.
Okay. Well, I've got it on actually at 11:10.
I'll put it on my blog.
It's there, yeah. It was published yesterday. Yeah, that's a great article.
You can also put a link to this show. I'll send it to you, and you can put it on your X account also.
Yeah.
That's right.
I'm going to put it up on the. I've got to run in about 2 minutes for another
me too.
appointment.
I have a meeting at 6:30, but thank God it's
Okay. And then when I
82
come back,
yards away from my home.
yeah, when I come back, I'll put this episode up on our Substack. So in about 2 hours, I'll send you some emails with this episode and with the covert action article.
For your listeners, you can give them my website, www.alfreddezayas.com, and my website, DeZayasAlfred WordPress.com, so that at least I try to keep my my blog very much up to date. And I put up a lot of interesting information, not only my stuff. I put up Jeff Sachs quite often. I put up Richard Falk, their articles. And I think it'd be important, for the listeners to know that they can get not only my books, but they can follow me in X, and they can follow me follow my blog.
Yeah, maybe we can arrange either in late February or March to have you and Jeff Sachs on the show.
That would be an honor. I have known Jeff Sachs for years, and if you have the human rights industry at hand, you will see there's a very nice picture of Jeff and me taken by his wife, by Sonia, on page 268 of the human rights industry. I must say, I remember telling Jeff Sachs that it would be nice if the United Nations would make Israel an international territory to be administered by the United Nations in view of the massive violations of international law by Israel, and that the administrator should be Jeffrey Sachs. And his reaction was, "Oh no, what a nightmare."
Yeah. Well, if you're in touch with him, that would be great if you could put us in touch with him, and we'll set up a show.
Sure. I mean,
either late February or March.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I only wish him many, many years in good health.
Yeah.
And his wife, by the way,
especially with the kidnapping of President Maduro and his wife, the First Lady. I mean, we've gone into gangster criminality in broad daylight. In broad daylight,
it is an assault on civilization. It's not just an assault on Venezuela. It's an assault on you and on me and on every concept of the rule of law. But again, it was great having you. I have to leave myself. So,
okay. Well, this was great. So we'll have that show probably in late February or early March. So I'll email you in a couple hours, and then you'll send me Jeff Sachs email.
For the article on genocide, I would love to put it up on my blog.
Okay.
And also use it in X so that some other people are aware of it.
Great. So I'll email you in like 2 hours.
Splendid. So,
okay.
Thanks a lot. It's been a pleasure.
We learned a lot from your lecture today. So.
Yeah. Okie dokie.
Okay. Care. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Bye.
Let me call Jayme. Okay, you got it.
Thanks. I'm signing out.
Okay, well, I'll just jump in real quick. So this has been Uncontrolled Opposition. Thanks to our guests. Thanks to Gloria and Jayme for the show.
Thanks, Jayme, for multitasking. I'm impressed.
I've been running this and pasta.
Jayme is juggling here, ladies and gentlemen. He's juggling.
We're gonna get out of here. We'll be back next week.
We got 3 shows going on, right?
Yeah,
two.
I got 2 more to do right after this. So back to back. I'm busy. All right. So thanks to Craig Pasta Jardula, executive producer of this show. And thanks to the Truth Wire for letting us broadcast on here while we had the conflict with Pasta to Go show. So we've got 2 things going on at the same time. And thank you for watching. We'll be back next week. Have a good one.
Too much. Well, what to